Welcome back, guys, to another video. We're so excited to have you guys here today. I'm joined with Matt McCluskey here in Jacksonville, Florida. And we're just hanging out, decided to do a few videos here together. And so yeah, just stick around. We're going to be talking about how to define spirituality to this generation. Stick around, guys. So yeah, today we're going to be talking about spirituality. Matt, how would you define to this generation, first of all, either to a believer that is more, doesn't have a spiritual framework, because we believe in the Holy Spirit very strongly, the activity, the manifestations, the gifts of the Spirit, as 1 Corinthians 12 talks about, right? It gives a whole list. If you're new even to this whole thing, just look in, obviously in the whole New Testament, a lot about the Holy Spirit. Jesus promised to give us the Holy Spirit. So we know Christianity is a spiritual reality. It is a spiritual religion. We're not ignorant of that. And we embrace the many manifestations of the Spirit, the gifts and all that. So if you're new to that, just check out that chapter and read the New Testament. But how would you define the spirit realm to an unbeliever and to a believer that has no grid for it, that just thinks it's kind of just a I
mean, I would say, a lot of times we grow up in high school and school, and we're really growing up even like in a 300-year history of the Enlightenment, and where humanism teaches us that we are just bodies on earth, that where there's no spirit. Maybe there's a soul. Psychology kind of talks about this, even secular psychology. But we're just bodies inhabiting earth. There's no spiritual realm, right? And I would say this, and yet the deepest longings of the human heart is actually to live from the place of the Spirit. So the truth is, this is what we're taught in school. This is what science is all built around now. And I would say the truth is, though, is that we're actually spirit beings that live in an earth suit. And so, and I believe that in the rhythms of natural life, this reality is actually really apparent. And so, for example, so if I'm talking to someone who has no grid, they're not a believer, there's no understanding of the realm of the Spirit, they're just like, dude, we're just bodies, man. And I'm like, okay, so you're just a body. Okay, well, how about this? If you go to a rock concert, people pay money to go to rock concerts, and in that place, there's music going on, and in that place they begin to experience another reality, right? It's not just the words. We could write up all the words. We could do everything. We could give it to you. And yet there's another reality that's manifest. And actually, what's going on is that mankind longs actually to live from the realm of the Spirit, and longs to lay down their thought life, not to gaze on materialistic things, but to gaze on something else. And rock concerts, they make their money. I mean, people make a lot of money doing this because people long to come into a place and actually worship something, right? And they're worshiping music, right? And so in that place, and I think most people who's probably watching can testify this. If it's a Coldplay concert, whatever it is, you're there and you're living from another place. In that moment, you don't know what it's called, but it's actually different than normal life. And in that place, actually, your spirit man is actually doing something else, and so this differential between when you're listening to that song and you feel transported into a new realm, which again, whether you're a believer or not, like this is a reality. It could be classical music. You're an atheist professor, but you love to sit with classical music, right? Because your spirit man is coming alive there. So there's a tingling in your spirit man. So that's how I kind of explain some things of the Spirit. Another thing to think about is, so one thing to think about is, what is spirit? I heard a guy named Dallas Willard, he was a Christian professor, taught on this, and he said one phrase that has unraveled a lot for me. He said, spirit is unbodily power. Wow. And so if you think about, so you're in the rock concert, and there's unbodily power. You can't define it. It's not a material thing, but there's a whisper, and it blows on you, and you're coming up into something different. And so just to help people, so that's how I kind of explain. If someone's a total atheist, it's like, well, there is something different, right? You're living from another place. So it's unbodily power. Another thing to think about is sports games. So a lot of times I love to watch soccer, and there may be a team losing 2-0, and it's halftime. They come out, they get a goal, 2-1. 5 minutes later, another goal, and then they win the game 4-2. And you're like, okay, how does that happen? Right. Well, it's the same physical body, it's the same 11 on 11, same skill sets, everything. But something was imparted into the spirit man of one team. It's called momentum. We've put a term with it, momentum. But their spirit man began to believe in victory. And so the belief, the realm of their spirit actually imparted something into their bodies where they played differently. And so just I find that there's always an interaction between the spirit and the body. We're just not sensitive to it, even in the world. In fact, I find that like we're always actually every human on earth is actually totally immersed in the realm of the spirit.
Wow. Yeah.
Without often seeing it or being able to define it as such.
Right.
Love, try to define love. Love is actually when you're in love with someone, like it's not just the facts about this person.
Yeah.
When you're in their presence, when you think of them, there's a manifestation of something else like in your spirit, man.
Right.
And so in short, just helping them realize that the world has kind of defined everything down as just our body, but actually the realm of the spirit is very real.
Right.
And whether you're a believer or unbeliever, you experience this regularly.
Yeah.
And so the realm of Jesus, the Holy Spirit, is love, joy, righteousness, peace, right? It's the fruits of the Spirit. And with righteousness, and the kingdom of heaven is not meat and drink, but righteousness, peace, and joy. And so I think of it as this, is that there's a realm that we're invited into. It's the realm of the Holy Spirit. It's to live life where we're united with the Holy Spirit, right? Where we're united with Him, and the way that we get there, it's like if there's a castle, and the Holy Spirit is the kingdom realm. Jesus, kingdom of heaven, is within us. The doorway is Jesus, right? Right. And it's laying down everything. If you think of it, it's a castle, and there's a moat, and there's a drawbridge, and we're on one side. The drawbridge is total surrender to Jesus.
Yeah, come on.
Coming into a moment in time and living out our lives on that bridge of, whatever you say, Jesus, I will do. Yeah. Like whatever it is, your ways, I surrender the rights to every other identity, every other value, to live how you tell me to. Come on. And in that place, we come in and we have total access to the realm of the Holy Spirit. Yeah. Right? And so the bridge is always His perfect work. And it's always a surrender to that. It's lordship. Right, come on. But we tangent that. We have a right to come into our Father's presence and to come into a manifestation of the Spirit, I believe, at any time. And the way that we walk on that bridge is just simple words of adoration, casting the gaze, and so we can come into His presence. And we come into His presence so often that we come into intimacy and friendship, where His thoughts begin to come alive in us. It's not just us pursuing Him. His thoughts come alive in us. Yeah. And so for me, like this is what Jesus died for, was intimacy with the Father, intimacy with the realm of the Holy Spirit. Yeah. And that's how I conceptualize it and kind of explain it to people. And I'll have them track with me, hey, if it's a group, close your eyes if you go to Rock Constance and you feel something like coming alive in you. Yeah. Raise your hand. All right, okay, good. It's like, okay, well, that's the realm of the Spirit. Close your eyes, And so having them track with you or in a conversation to explain the things of the Spirit. Yeah. And so there's the explanation, and then there's also just pure encounter. That we get to walk in. Right. I find that sometimes people need both. Sometimes people don't need the explanation. They're like, this is real. Just give me everything. Give me Jesus. Yeah. So I'm just like, well, what happened? And so being able to explain them for them. And so the goal is for us to live with the power of Jesus in us. Yeah. And again, another thing I'll say this too, and this is kind of like a word for charismatics, I would say. It's because we love to experience things if you're charismatics, right? Yeah. And it is possible to come into a worship setting and where you begin to worship the Lord, but you're worshiping Him to get an experience of love or peace or joy. And there's a right heart with this. I don't want people to kind of get off because we I long to be with people I love so that I experience them. Right? There's a good longing here. But I've also seen the case be such that people come into moments of time and they actually have the experience of God over God Himself. And they actually begin to experience something. But the bridge is not a total adoration and surrender to Jesus. It's actually a desire for something else. A desire for an encounter. A desire for these different things. And actually I've realized it's kind of like if you come into a big room, there's one balloon in that room floating around that's actually Jesus. And there could be a balloon that's romance or a balloon that's power and authority. And you can come in and you say you want Jesus, but you actually want these other things. And you begin to experience something, so you think you've received Jesus. Yeah. But you've actually tapped into other balloons in the room. And so the key is always keeping like an adoration for Jesus. Yes. And you're tapping into the balloon of Jesus in that room. If you imagine a 3D situation, if there's joy, peace, and righteousness. Good. And growing in you in the seasons of your life. Yeah. And so for charismatics, and again, I'm one. Like I love the realm of the Holy Spirit.
Yeah.
But if there's not a track record of righteousness growing in your life over seasons, a year, 2 years, and yet you're still encountering this thing, then you need to question what balloon you're tapping into.
It's good.
Absolutely. And so just where we as charismatics, like, I will fight to the death to defend the reality of the Holy Spirit, right?
Yeah.
Because He's real. But we're also able to correct people maybe who, not say that every manifestation is of Him, or being able to at least say, hey, there can be many situations where people are tapping into different things, calling it Jesus, but it's actually something else. Right. So we have a little tool in our toolkit. That's how I conceptualize it.
Yeah. That's really good.
Yeah.
So, like you said, kind of to review your points, first of all, we live in the realm of the Spirit. Like, no one is excluded from the spiritual reality that God actually created us. We are a triune being, spirit, soul, and body. And the spirit man is the deepest core part of who we are. We see this in the garden that God breathed the breath of life, the ruah, the breath of God, the spirit of God. He breathed it into Adam in Genesis. The last, I believe it's the last verse in Genesis 1. It talks about how God breathed. So now we're spiritual being. When Adam lost and was I would say, like, divorced or separated, sin came in, I believe he lost the Spirit. He lost the highest realm of life with God. And that's why there was the separation, right? And now...
Yeah, the intimate union of the Holy Spirit with Adam's spirit. I mean, Adam still had his spirit, man.
Right.
But he didn't have the union with the Holy Spirit, which Jesus has now made possible.
Right. Yeah. And so that's why Jesus came, to restore that union, the fellowship that we would have God as the core of who we are, the Spirit of God living in us and making, qualifying us into His kingdom as the children of God. Right, and so we see we all live in the spirituality. If we don't have the Holy Spirit, we're not in the kingdom, and that's actually, Jesus talks about, unless a man is born of the Spirit, he cannot see the kingdom of heaven. So there has to be a rebirth for you to be brought into God's kingdom. And if you're not in His kingdom, you're either in the kingdom of light or the kingdom of darkness, right? That's those two kingdoms. And Jesus is the King of the kingdom of light, truth, righteousness, peace, right? And so He wants to bring us into that reality, right?
Yeah, and just to go along with that too, is that, like you said, if you're not aware of it, there are many believers, they have a saving grace, saving faith in Jesus, but they'll come into a worship setting and they're just kind of total dead. There's no understanding in the realm of their spirit that something else here is available. Yeah. And you see it because they're just kind of like this, looking around, whereas you're enjoying the Lord. Yeah. Right. And so, and obviously they need an encounter with the Lord. They need, and that's why, Paul writes in Ephesians to a very mature church, that the eyes of their understanding would be enlightened. They would be flooded with the light of Jesus. That their inner man would begin to experience Him, their spirit man would begin to experience Him. And so that's something I regularly pray over them, regularly pray over myself, and living in that realm. And that's the thing, is that the Holy Spirit's available, and there are many Spirit-led believers, and I've been through seasons, I'm still get through seasons of this, where at any moment in time there are kind of two balloons of thought that are available to us. So you're living in the rhythms of your day, and you can have thought patterns that are just rooted in the flesh, how normal people would react, how you normally would react, and then thought patterns rooted in the Spirit, like I was thinking of it as balloons. And you're living from the realm of His Spirit in you, in the realm of your spirit. For example, when chaos happens around you, and yet there's joy and peace. Right, exactly. And we know there are moments in our day and week that are like that, and there may be other moments where chaos happens around you, and you so easily come to the other balloon, and the reactions are different. Right. And worry and fear, right? And so the goal is that we would, Paul says, pray without ceasing, but that we begin to live with this balloon of His thought patterns, of His reactions, effortlessly flowing out of us. Yes. I'm always reminded too of the verse, like Paul says, like, I pray that you be strengthened with might in your inner man. Right. And again, we all know what it's like to, if we're believers, have been a believer for a few years, to be walking in your day, someone calls you, they're like, Matt, I need you to pray for me. And we've all been in a place like that, and how would you say it? It feels like there's a demand being made on us greater than our ability to sow out. Now, some of that can be identity, where we're kind of basing our reaction on our strength, but we realize I'm most aware now of all these fleshly things, you know, and we need to be in the world, but not of the world. So being in business, but rooted in another reality. But in short, we know situations like that. We know situations where it's like, oh yeah, let me pray for you, man. Like, we had a chaotic day. And so this is, just saying like we're going from, good to great. And so wherever you are on that journey, he wants to take us where in our thought patterns at all times are his righteousness, his peace and joy, the bank account of heaven that rests within us because of Jesus, and where that is our reality. And so, again, so those are the differences. I'm just trying to describe them. Another thing is you go into a Chick-fil-A and you're like, what do you want to, well, we're the cute girls, we're the cute guys if you're a single person, Another one is like, what do you want to do here, Lord? Yes. And so continually we're seated in our thought life with Christ. Yeah. And that's I think that's the goal is to continually, and that's where he's bringing the church, I believe, to actually be people of presence, to be people where his thoughts are most ascendant in us. Right. Our reactions are normal. Our reactions are the reactions of Jesus. Right. And I see him raising up a generation that's doing that.
So good.
Yeah.
Two verses comes to mind. Jesus said, "My words are spirit and life."
Yeah.
So every word that Jesus spoke was life from the realm of the spirit. So our words don't even just come, like the power of words isn't the information, and because think about it, your mouth is just like making sounds.
Right.
Right? Like if you really think about language, it's just sound. But it's coming from when you say something and you mean it, like it's coming from the spirit. So Jesus said, "My words are spirit and they're life," because he had the Holy Spirit, and the things he spoke were actually the life from the realm of the Spirit. Yeah. And then in the second verse, Jesus said, "I'm raising up worshipers that will worship me in spirit and truth." Right. So once again, he's going back to it. Obviously, language defines. Language gives a verbal expression of what we feel in the spirit. Yeah. So if you once again like this. We're trying to destroy the argument that the realm of the spirit is non-existent. No, it's very present. Yeah. Every word is a spiritual reality that you're experiencing deep within you. And so words communicate, out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. Yeah. So the things that you speak comes from the way you think, comes from the way of who you are internally, who you are, and so like God is raising up people that will live in that realm, in the kingdom, and receive life from God, language from God, wisdom from God, from the Spirit of God, that will allow them to communicate to this generation the heart of God, the love of God, the peace of God, and bring God's kingdom in those ways.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to go, you're talking about this divergence between like normal words and kind of words said from the Spirit. Yeah. I would say like most of us, we've been in situations where, Christians, again, if you're in church, I can sit somewhere for 1 or 2 minutes and often sense if I'm listening to somebody, like, are these words coming from like man's knowledge or from the realm of the Holy Spirit?
Right.
They hit your mind differently. Yeah. And I believe this, like a word said from an encounter with the Lord, and I'm not saying like it has to be this big encounter, but I'm just saying where he speaks with you. Yeah. And it's spoken, he reveals it to your spirit and you kind of sow it out. Like it hits people differently. Right. You can sense it. You can sense sometimes, when someone's praying over you, so it hits you differently. I don't know another way to describe it.
Because it's ownership. You've received it, and now you can give it.
Right. And one more thing too is that we all know, again, words have power. Because if we said, "Hey, close your eyes and ask the Lord, what are 2 phrases that were said over me that wounded my spirit?" Right. The Lord, he could remind you of something when you were 7 years old, some teacher, your parents said something to you, your brother or sister. And so words have power to both hurt, but also to build up. And obviously the Holy Spirit's in the business of building up, restoring. Yeah. And so so the realm of the Spirit's very real. Yeah. And encouraging you guys to talk about it with your friends on occasion, to have these dialogue.
Yeah, so bless you guys. Thank you guys for watching this short video. Why don't you just comment below, what is your favorite verse in the Bible, if you know it? if you read through it. What's your favorite verse about the spirit realm or the Holy Spirit or the spiritual realities? Just comment below, and we'll just throw it around and see what people like out there and be encouraged by it. So thank you guys so much for watching. We love you guys, and keep on loving Jesus.
Yeah.
And live in the Spirit.
Come on.